Thank you very much for the introduction. So today I would like to go with you through what I call the multi-scale journey through energy systems. It's really the focus of my research group, and my aim today was really try not to use any equation in this presentation, which I achieved, but was extremely difficult. First of all, we all know that one of the global challenges that we are facing is really powering the planet, and scientists and technologists are approaching this problem in two different ways, complementary ways. In one case, we are trying to develop clean technologies, and in parallel, energy storage devices where this energy can be actually stored and then used when it's necessary. And the other part is really to reduce the impact of current energy production. And one of the concepts that is being investigated is really carbon capture and sequestration. So I would like to cover very briefly these two components. The first part will be really looking at the problems that we are trying to address concerning energy storage devices, and in particular batteries, lithium-ion battery systems. And the second part is really related to carbon sequestration and storage, and then try to understand the similarities that actually characterize them both. And the first part is really related to what I call the Tesla challenge, and this is clearly related to lithium-ion batteries. Now, this is for me a personal challenge because I always wanted to buy a Tesla, but it's too expensive. And so this is really and the reason why it's very expensive is really because as scientists we still, despite a lot of advancement that has been done recently, we still quite do not understand how the chemistry and the physics at the very, very small scale actually translates into the behavior of the system at a much larger scale. How do these batteries perform over a very, very long time frame, for example, over the entire battery life, and essentially how we can predict this behavior, if it can ever be predicted. And this lack of understanding actually leads to two components that contribute to this very annoying part of the problem, which is oversize of the battery pack and underutilization, and also our total inability as of today to actually understand battery life and aging. Now, I would like to let you know that if you do own a Tesla, in fact, the reason why you are paying so much money, which I think is about 70K at this point, is not because of the incredible technological design that is embedded in the Tesla, but it's because we have essentially a very oversized cooling system. So you are paying a lot of money for a cooling system, but if you have questions about that, we can address it later. Now, similar challenges, even though the system is completely different, come when we talk about carbon capture and storage. And in particular, the challenges are similar because also in this case, what we are doing is essentially we are trying to inject and trap carbon CO2 in the subsurface, and we want to make sure that it stays there for a long, long time. So again, we have a problem of trying to make predictions over a very, very large time scale, while our physical understanding is really limited to the physics at a very, very short time scale. So the questions here are, will there be CO2 leakage through a bedrock? So will this CO2 escape? And can CO2 stay trapped, and for how long? At this point, you probably are asking, this seems quite a schizophrenic talk, and it may be if I did not highlight the similarities that exist between these two completely different systems. So if you look at the battery, at the cathode or an anode of a battery, you will see that if you look at the structure under the microscope, you'll see a porous structure. The same exact, very similar structure you will see if you take a rock from the ground and you actually put it under the microscope. So essentially these two systems despite apparently very different, actually deal with reactive transport in multi-scale porous systems, and they exhibit what we refer to as coupled dynamics between scales. Now, the question that we are trying to address in our group is how do we model this very complex multi-scale systems, and in particular, can this model be predictive? So can we bound modeling errors and be sure about our prediction? I wanted to give a physical, well, an intuition of what people use, well, about these words multi-scale, that now we hear a lot, and coupled dynamics, maybe looking at the problem from a completely different point of view, and in particular, looking at Cindy. So this is Cindy, everybody's Cindy. So Cindy is a lady, and we have a picture of her. And again, if we look maybe a little closer, we see that the picture is a little bit pixelated. And if we look closer and closer, we actually realize that this is one of Chuck Close's painting. So that's not a picture, but it's actually a painting. And this really highlights the concept of what a multi-scale system is. So it's a system where if you zoom in, you observe a different level of granularity, okay? And if you look from far away, it just looks as a continuum, okay? So you can observe structures and heterogeneity at different scales depending on how close or far away you zoom in and out from that system. And now the concept of what do we mean, the scientists and engineers mean by multi-scale dynamics. Now this is just to stay in the theme. This is another painting by Chuck Close. This time this is his friend Lucas. Now what I did, this is the original painting. What I did in this modification is that I only changed 8 pixels in the whole picture, so it's a very, very small percentage of these pixels, yet I could create a completely different look because I gave him essentially a scar, right? And so this is an example of what coupling between scales mean, where by changing locally the system at a very, very fine scale, you actually can have a completely different effect at a large scale. And of course, if you move exactly the same pixels somewhere else, you notice that there is not much difference. So this would be an example where a multi-scale system does not exhibit coupling of scales. And so you can apply this, of course, to lithium-ion batteries. As you can see, if you zoom out, you see your very desirable Tesla. And if you zoom in, you can look at this granularity and this description at very many different scales, and so forth. CO2 sequestration, where you can look at the field scale. Well, maybe we identify geological units at a very large scale, but then if we zoom in, this is the typical structure that we look at. Now, how do we model these systems? Where there are different modeling approaches, and really what we care about in our group is to understand how to stitch together descriptions on multiple scales. When systems are actually coupled, they exhibit a coupling between different scales. The way they do it, the way we do it, is to develop models that are physics-based, and they are computational and also theoretical models to try to determine this stitching in a way that not only is computationally efficient, but also predictive. And well, so far it's been so good in the sense that our efforts as a group, most of which, like most of my students and postdocs are there in the back, has been recognized with the DOE Young Investigator Award. But there is still a lot of work to do, both in battery and CO2 sequestration, and we hope that we are not too close to the edge. And with this, I would like to thank, first of all, my postdocs and students that are in San Diego State colors, and all my collaborators, and of course the funding agencies without which this could have never been presented, and especially you for staying here so late on Tuesday afternoon. Thank you.
While you may not be able to dance, I will say you're still a fabulous performer.
Oh, thank you.
But we're happy to take questions now.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Do you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It doesn't amplify.
oh, okay. So if you're able to observe something new in this coupling between scales, what would be the most important things that you could achieve, both for battery design and for carbon sequestration?
Okay, so for battery design is actually estimate of state of charge and state of health. Okay, so far, due to the lack of models that can appropriately describe this coupling between scales, we are really unable on vehicles, on electric vehicles, to accurately estimate what the state of charge and state of health of the battery is. And now, why is that important? Well, state of health is important because state of health is related to aging of the battery. And the aging is related to how long your battery will live on your vehicle. And that is related to how much batteries they will put in your vehicle to make sure that it will last long enough. And also it will essentially keep the price high if you try to sell your used hybrid vehicle or electric vehicle. If you now notice, if you try to buy, and this is actually a warning, if you try to buy a used electric or hybrid vehicle, the price can be half of what it costs when it's new. Why is that? Because the goodness of the battery is highly dependent on the driving cycle of the person who drove this vehicle before. And so since you cannot predict since you don't have a connection between driving cycle and the state of health of your battery, essentially you cannot even guarantee that this battery will last long enough, and therefore that you did a good investment by buying a used car. So that's one thing. So battery aging and state of health. For CO2 sequestration, really the major problem at this point is to be able to make predictions that are reliable over a time scale that spans hundreds of thousands of years. And as of today, there is absolutely no model that can do that, because these are models that are always constructed at one scale, and they don't take into account all the continuity of scales or hierarchy of scales that are included in the physics. And so by improving the models, the hope is that we will also be able to improve the predictivity and hopefully be able to say, yes, if you inject supercritical CO2 here, it will stay there for at least this much time. Oh, I have two questions. I don't know.
Thank you very much. Everyone is hoping for some improvements in battery performance, as you've clearly stated. And most research seems to focus on the lithium-ion batteries. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, is there anything else in the portfolio of a totally different nature that you might be aware of?
So the beauty of this, of the models that we develop is that, as you can see from the presentation, they are very interchangeable between different systems, because they are fundamental ways of coupling models at different granularity in different systems. So whatever we develop for the specific application of lithium-ion batteries will be easily transferable to batteries that have different chemistries. But we focused on lithium-ion because our collaborators at Automotive Engineering in Clemson University have experiments on lithium-ion batteries. But it's not a limitation.
So when you talk about multi-scale processes, it seems to me that almost everything you can think of may fall into that category.
I agree.
So, for example, the two previous talks, I think the astronomy issue really is a multi-scale process, at least the analysis of what's happening out in space. And in fact, the human behavioral responses to training are really a multi-stage process as well, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Absolutely. This is why this word has become so famous recently. And there is a reason. The reason is because we are able to see better. Well, where by seeing, I mean the improvement in technologies of visualizing things got better. And with that, also our ability to see at different levels, different things. And this is absolutely true. It's true for an infinite number of applications ranging from biology to sociology, astronomy, of course. These are absolutely, I would say, concepts that now became kind of mainstream because the computational power progressed as well. Before, people knew that there were different things, right? But we couldn't do much about it because we had our Commodore 64 and, we cannot do much with it. But now that we have a, petascale supercomputer, we can do much better. And now that's when the technological empowerment of computations has actually enabled a lot of this modeling that before was just limited by computational advancement. Yeah.
So you stayed away from equations for
Yeah,
the
that
sake
was
of the
very
audience. But so a question is, some of the equations that you've developed for multi-scale processes with lithium-ion batteries, will those same types of equations have applicability in such distinct areas as human behavior and astronomy, or are multi-scale processes in fact themselves so diverse that each one needs its own fundamental solution?
Okay, so the equations that you use to describe systems at different scales, of course, are different for any specific system, right? So in fluid mechanics, we use Navier-Stokes, and then we can use, other equations to describe the same process at different level of granularity. And if you go to biology, well, actually, some of them are still Navier-Stokes, but they are different. However, the way you couple them, I wouldn't say is universal. It's too strong of a statement. But the approach that you use to try to find this coupling or these links can be very, very similar. But it has always to be specific to that particular application.
Well, thank you, Ilenia.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Another round.